Every culture on Earth follows one absolute rule about death that has never been broken anywhere. For over 5,000 years, certain individuals have been breaking that sacred rule repeatedly. And what they discovered in the process will leave you thinking deeply about it for many days ahead. Necromancy is the ancient practice of raising the departed and commanding them to serve the living. It means reaching across the veil between worlds and forcing answers from the other side directly. Sometimes it meant summoning spirits to gain forbidden knowledge only the departed could provide. Other times it meant bending the departed into service, binding them to objects in certain places. Death is supposed to be the one boundary that no living soul can ever hope to breach successfully. But calling the departed back strips silence from the grave and invites forces beyond our control. Here's the truly unsettling part that most people don't know about these ancient forbidden rituals. Once you invite those forces into our world, you cannot dismiss them, no matter how hard you try. Kings outlawed these practices across their lands, and priests condemned them from every pulpit. Yet despite all efforts to erase it, necromancy never truly disappeared from human civilization. The practice begins in ancient Mesopotamia, over 4,000 years ago, in the cradle of civilization. The earth wasn't still there. Instead, it pulsed with mysterious forces, connected to the departed. To reach them, the living would cut pits deep into the soil, creating literal holes into the earth. Then they poured offerings of food, beer, milk, and other substances into these openings in the ground. These weren't gentle requests for help. They were powerful commands that demanded immediate answers. And when the departed rose in response, they came back, changed, hungry, restless, and very dangerous. You didn't ask questions without offering something valuable in return for the knowledge you sought. Those who disturbed the grave too often discovered that something followed them back to their homes. In ancient Egypt, the passing was wrapped in elaborate ritual, but power still clung to every tomb. Anubis, the jackal-headed guardian, stood watch at the threshold between the world of the living and gone. He weighed the hearts of the departed against the feather of truth to determine their eternal fate. But some priests didn't just guide souls. They attempted to speak with them and draw forbidden wisdom. Spells carved into stone and papyrus were meant to light the path, but some called them back instead. The Book of the Gone warns that tombs were chambers of passage, but also dangerous sources of power. And anything pulled from those sacred spaces came with a terrible cost that had to be paid eventually. In ancient Greece, Homer's Odyssey describes how the hero carved a pit and poured milk, honey, and wine. The departed rose in a frenzy, pressing around him, desperate for taste, for form, and for voice again. Only after they fed did the prophet Tiresias appear to speak what no living person should ever know. But Odysseus stood there trembling, surrounded by the departed, unsure what he had truly called forth. The Greeks even built temples for this purpose, where pilgrims went deep underground to summon shades. These were called Necromanteion, places of negotiation with those gone, where silence was never total. As necromancy moved from ancient myth into actual practice, it became something that empires truly feared. The Romans in particular lived with deep unease about those who practiced forbidden arts in graveyards. Their stories are filled with tales of sorceresses who prowled burial grounds under cover of darkness. The poet Horace warned of Canidia, describing how she would disturb resting places for dark rituals. Lucan wrote of Erichtho, the Thessalian practitioner who would retrieve remains from ancient battlefields. Rome believed necromancy was absolutely real and that practitioners could bend the natural order itself. But this fear wasn't unique to Rome. In the Hebrew Bible, necromancy is condemned in the strongest terms. The book of Deuteronomy states clearly that no one should be found consulting with those who have passed. These were laws against transgression, making clear the departed were completely off limits to the living. Their knowledge was forbidden, and to reach for it was to challenge the very order of creation itself. But even when condemned, necromancy remained, as shown in the story of the Witch of Endor in Samuel. King Saul, desperate and abandoned, begged her to raise the prophet Samuel to provide him with guidance. She succeeded, and when Samuel rose from his resting place, it was a moment that broke every sacred law. By this point in history, necromancy had become two things at once, a tool of prophecy and a weapon. You could summon the departed to gain prophecy, or you could use them to create terror among your enemies. To the Romans, it represented corruption. To the Hebrews, it was rebellion against the divine order itself. But both civilizations believed the same fundamental truth about the boundary between living and gone. That line could break under certain conditions, and when it did, something always managed to come through. By the medieval era, the church named necromancy as the darkest offense a soul could possibly commit. It meant working with dark forces, wielding stolen power, and stepping outside the natural order entirely. Inquisitors hunted practitioners relentlessly, claiming anyone raising the departed worked with darkness. At the center of this fear were the grimoires, books promising knowledge the living should never possess. The Key of Solomon and others outlined rituals, invocations, and signs meant to compel spiritual forces. These books were considered dangerous simply for existing, and opening one meant risking your very soul. Some names were whispered more than others, like Gerbert of Aurillac, who later became Pope Sylvester II. He was rumored to have studied forbidden arts, though all claims were never proven in the records. Roger Bacon, the English philosopher, faced accusations of hiding necromancy behind his alchemy work. John Dee, advisor to Queen Elizabeth, spent his life chasing lost knowledge shadowed by rumors. By then, necromancy was considered treason against heaven, and every accusation carried the same warning. Now let's discuss the Norse understanding of those who return, quite different from other cultures. In Norse belief, the Draugr is a form that rises from its resting place with tremendous physical strength. Unlike spirits, the Draugr keeps its physical form and can interact with the material world directly. It protects what it was buried with, and its presence brings sickness, madness, and fear to the living. The Draugr returns when something is terribly wrong, when someone was too proud, greedy, or hateful. It rises from envy and vengeance, or from the refusal to be forgotten by those who remain in the world. In other cases, improper burial rituals or wrong conditions before passing could trigger the return. If someone passed with bitterness in their heart, the Norse feared they might eventually return again. But not all the departed returned to harm. Some were brought back through ritual to serve purposes. In Slavic and Eastern European folklore, the departed could be bound by will and raised to obey. The magic involved was very precise, and resting places could be opened with the right conditions. In parts of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, remains could be compelled to rise through ritual magic. The process involved iron implements, dark thread, and the names of the departed spoken aloud clearly. If done correctly, the departed would carry out tasks like guarding burial sites or watching roads. In some regions, they were bound to walk specific paths around villages, creating magical barriers. In Bohemia and Moravia, folktales speak of restless workers raised to finish the labor they left.
resuming.
These returned as silent, tireless laborers who worked through the night and vanished again before dawn.